Awesome. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and kick us off. So thank you all for coming today to our October statewide meeting. We have a really exciting meeting today where we're going to get to learn a little bit more about the insides of advocacy at the State House and then also in general. So as you may know, it's one of the most important things that we as an organization can do is making sure that the main decision makers within our state and also within our cities and within the country are aware of what we as citizens are interested in and are supportive of. So what we're going to learn today is what are the strategies to most effectively communicate to these leaders, right? Because we want to make sure that they're always approaching us with ears that are open and ready to listen, right? We don't want to put them in a situation where they automatically block us off, and we want to learn what kind of things we can say, what kind of strategies we can use to get our message across as effectively as possible. And maybe one more thing for context, we're going to have some pretty big asks for our friends at the State House over the next year or so. There's a lot of work that is going on in pushing for additions to the budget, for instance, for next year. And so things like trying to get Ohio back into the Midwest Interstate Passenger Rail Commission, things like trying to get funding for phase 2 of the corridor ID study, which the state of Ohio will have to put some money in for. Those will require the support of our legislature. And so it will require us making our voices heard there as effectively as possible. So with that, I would like to introduce Rachel Coyle today, who is going to teach us about how things work at the State House. And from what I have heard from John, you come highly recommended. And so I know I personally am super excited to learn a bit more about what you do and to get some advice from you today.
Awesome. John is wonderful. He speaks too highly of me, but I hope I'll reach his standards. So hey everyone, my name is Rachel Coyle. Thank you for meeting me on a Saturday morning. Great to be here. I do lots of work in Ohio politics, working with a lot of groups, but one of the programs that I run is an advocacy training, which you're going to receive today on how the State House works and how you can insert yourself into the process of a bill becoming law in our state. So I'm going to share my screen. And this training is set up for everyone at every skill level. So if you have never advocated at the State House, it'll be a lot of information, but you will get a lot out of it. And then also if you are the kind of person who works in the State House, it is still hopefully set up so that you will get tips and tricks from someone who used to work there. So I'm going to fun technology part. All right. So I'm going to get started here. So this training program has actually existed since 2016 now, which is wild to think about. At my coworker and I, at the time, we were both working at the State House on the Senate side, and we were wondering what we could do to get more people involved at the state level, because one of the problems we noticed was that bills were being passed that we knew a lot of Ohioans wouldn't agree with, but there was no pushback. We would literally sit for hours in between a single constituent phone call. And so we thought maybe the problem was that people didn't understand the process, or they were only focusing on national news, because that is absolutely something that happens a lot. It's very overwhelming to care about national politics. So adding a whole new branch of government in is quite a lot, quite an ask. So we literally put an event on Facebook. We said, come learn about the State House. That was as far as we thought it out. And within 2 days, about 1,000 people had signed up, which was like 950 more people than the room was going to hold. But it was a really big red flag that people in Ohio need help learning how to advocate at the state level. So now this training has been going for about 8 years, which is wild. So first point to note is that there's going to be a lot of websites and links that I talk about during the presentation. I will send them all to you afterwards. I've got a big document with all the links that I'm going to talk about, and I will send them. Everyone here, they have your email address because you signed up for the presentation. So that will come out to you and you can have everything we talk about today. Also, again, don't worry if you've never paid attention to the State House before, this training is set up for you as well as folks who want to just know tips. So, one of the things I've learned over the last couple of years is that people are hesitant to get involved in state house advocacy because they don't know why state level advocacy is so important when there's so much going on at the national level, which is fair. So I've actually started the first couple slides now are an explanation of why you have to get involved at the state level. I truly believe that the state level of government is the most powerful. But there's a lot of people who will fight me on that. But here's why I believe it. So the first reason is gerrymandering, is line drawing. So in Ohio, even if you only care about Congress and national politics, you still have to care about state government because they're the ones who draw the district lines that decide when or who goes to Congress. So who represents you in DC. In that district down there at the bottom is an example of how politicians in Ohio have been drawing district lines to make it very difficult to vote them out of office, even if they don't do anything you agree with. That district down there at the bottom was Congressman Jim Jordan's district for about 10 years. And it is clearly drawn through half the state to make it very, very difficult to vote him out, even if his constituents disagreed with him. So if that's the only reason you care about the state house, you still have to do it. Another reason is there is actually a really effective organizational strategy on the right. The folks on the left have not caught up yet. Someday it'll be even, but there is on the right, they figured out about 10 years ago that they don't actually need to pass many bills through Congress. They can actually just pass the same bill through 30 or 40 states at the same time and really get the same agenda accomplished. So they've actually got entire organizations set up to do just that. ALEC is their most infamous one. They will write pieces of conservative legislation and then feed it to a Republican legislator in every state in the country. And then all of a sudden, these bills start to pass all over the country and before anyone notices it. And you look around and you think, does everyone feel this way about this issue? One of the most commonly known examples is the stand your ground laws that started in Florida with gun rights. And those were an ALEC bill that began being introduced and passed quickly through multiple states throughout the country. And all of a sudden, the entire conversation on gun rights moved to the right. If you look around and you think maybe everyone in my community supports stand your ground, maybe I'm the outside one, when really it is just an incredibly effective organizing strategy. And so one of the things that is necessary is to pay attention at the state level so that when bills move that maybe you don't necessarily agree with, you are fighting them and pushing back on them before it becomes the entire national conversation has shifted. Another reason is local impact. So a lot of times in Ohio, especially, we see folks who are very passionate about their local communities and they're angry. They end up being angry at the wrong folks. They get angry at their mayor or their city council when actually the problem is that the state has taken away local rights or taken away local funding. And so one of the biggest examples I give of this is the local government fund. We actually have a fund in Ohio that is supposed to go towards things like filling those potholes in your road and parks and local infrastructure and school infrastructure. And about a decade ago now, the legislature took a large amount of that money. They fully drained that account and used it to plug holes in the state budget. And they have never restored that funding. So Ohio's communities have been essentially starving. They have been trying all of these different patterns and strategies to make up some of that money. And people are seeing those policies and not sure who to blame for it. So we end up with more police being forced to get more ticket quotas, like give out more tickets to make money for the community. You end up seeing things like traffic cameras. You end up with slower police and fire response times. You end up with potholes that stick around longer and aren't filled as well. And that is all because the community is trying to make up for this lost money from the state budget, but people don't actually know who to get mad at. And that is a big part of our problem. So I always start this training as well with a reminder of how much power there is at the state level, state and local, because so few people contact the state legislature. It is unbelievable how few people it is required to sound very loud at the state level. But that also means that if you don't use that power, you don't use your voice at the state level, it will take a very small number of people to get something passed that you don't like. And so you actually really end up having to use that power because there is so much of it. So what we're talking through today is some very, very basics, like terms I'm going to use just to make sure you know what they are, how a bill becomes a law in Ohio, and what you can do about it, where you can insert yourself into that advocacy process. And I'll talk through some resources, which again, I will send you everything afterwards, and then happily come back and do some Q&A. So the basic terms you need to know, the first one is going to be General Assembly, or GA. So this refers to, it can refer to the State House, but it often refers to the 2-year period that they operate in. This is key because any bill that is introduced in the State House only has that 2-year term to go through the whole process: House, Senate, get to the governor's office, get signed into law. Even if it gets most of the way there, but doesn't become law between those 2 years, it will die at the end of the GA, the General Assembly, and have to be reintroduced and start the whole process over again. So we are actually coming to the end of our current General Assembly this calendar year, and that will lead us into what is called lame duck session, which is the time out of the 2-year period where every legislator in the State House is trying to pass every bill they've introduced into law all at the same time for the last 2 years. It is chaos. They know it's going to be chaos. They often tend to use this chaos to their advantage, where they'll pass some of their most controversial legislation during lame duck. Lame duck in Ohio also it also occurs immediately after major federal elections every even-numbered year. So I don't know if you all have heard, but there's an election this November, and it's taken up a lot of oxygen. And after the election is over, literally the week after the election is over, is when Ohio's lame duck session will start. And it is going to be the most important time of the last 2 years for the Ohio legislature. But it also happens to be the time when most people want to just never think about politics again, when they want to turn off their TVs, put down their phones, be with their families for the holidays. And it's actually the time when we need the most possible people to be paying attention. So if you haven't planned your holidays yet, I think everyone should do their holidays in January, and we can all rest then together. Another term to know is session. So that also has 2 meanings. One is it's the time of year when the legislators are working. Technically, in Ohio, it is a part-time job to be a legislator, but it also refers to the times when they're physically in the State House, in the chamber, voting on bills. So those are terms I'm going to use today. I will try to remind you what they mean throughout the process. Another term to know is supermajority. So I give this presentation in a lot of rooms. I tell people, I don't care which party you are with. Supermajorities of any party are bad for democracy. When we were in junior high, we all learned about checks and balances and how the branches of government are supposed to check each other. And that does not happen under a supermajority. So right now, Ohio has a supermajority of Republicans in both the House and Senate. And that means that, so Governor DeWine is also a Republican. Sometimes he disagrees with the legislature. Sometimes he thinks a bill is too extreme or not reasonable in any way, and he will veto that bill. He will say he doesn't want to pass it. But right now, because of the supermajority, the Republicans have enough members in both chambers to override that veto and force something into law all by themselves. It really gives them more power than any other branch of government, and it takes away those checks and balances we all learned about in school. So supermajorities are problematic no matter who has them. And this, I will not go into this because it's very technical, but it really just shows you how much power there is in a supermajority to move bills faster than the traditional process. They can skip over parts of the process. They can force things onto the ballot. They can force things into law immediately. It really is, it speeds up the process of turning a bill into a law and gives all the power to one branch. So I want to talk through a little bit of the dynamics of the leadership. So these slides are going to have to change after this calendar year because every General Assembly, every GA, the leadership will change. But these are going to be incredibly important relationship dynamics to understand for the next couple of months heading into the end of this year. So the two people I want you to focus on are the two gentlemen there at the top. On the left is Matt Huffman. He's the Senate president. And on the right is Jason Stevens, who is the current House Speaker. Right now in Ohio, there is a dynamic that we need to understand because it is truly how most of my advocacy has worked over the last couple of years. We are actually currently stopping bills that advocates oppose because of the relationship dynamic of these three people here. So it is important to know how this came about, why it's there, because every person who supports any of these three folks, their vote is going to be impacted by where they stand in this leadership fight at the State House. So on the left here, so basically right now, there are so many Republicans at the State House that they have broken into two factions. And on the left is Jason Stevens, so he is the House Speaker. And on the right is Derek Marin, and he wanted to be House Speaker. He's a current member of the Ohio House. He's actually also running for Congress in Northwest Ohio against Marcy Kaptur, fun fact. But he, about 2 years ago, at the beginning of this General Assembly, this 2-year period, the Republicans got together in a in a unofficial capacity, and they voted to make Derek Marin the next Speaker of the Ohio House, the most powerful person in the House. This is self-described. He is very far to the right. He's Trump guy, MAGA. That's his whole aesthetic. And the Democrats in the chamber were nervous about having someone who is so far to the right being their speaker. So they actually got together with some of the more moderate Republicans, and they cobbled together enough votes to defeat Derek Marin in the official vote that happened a few weeks later. They replaced him with Jason Stevens, who is slightly more moderate, slightly more willing to work with Democrats and that kind of thing. And this was a shock to everyone. The press was shocked about it. No one had heard this coming. They did these negotiations over Christmas break. And we all come back and there's a different speaker than we thought there would be. So Derek Marin was not happy about this. He actually decided that none of this was official and that he was still the speaker. He decided that because he got the most Republican votes, those were the only votes that matter because they're the majority party. And so he is still the leader. So he has a coalition of people. We actually call them the Marin Caucus, who agree with him that he is the leader. And their entire goal has become to make life difficult for Jason Stevens, to weaken his authority. They have spent many months trying to stop bills that Jason Stevens wants to pass. They took a long time passing even the rules that would govern the House because they fought against those. It has truly been fascinating to watch. So then the other dynamic here is that Matt Huffman, who is the Senate president, is coming over to the Ohio House next year. He's going to be in the House next year, and he wants to be the speaker. So he has aligned himself with Derek Marin and the Marin Caucus to try and undermine Jason Stevens. The entire goal is that when Huffman comes over to the House next year, Stevens will be weak enough because of all of this drama that Huffman can then become the speaker instead of Stevens. It is ridiculous. It's fascinating to watch from a political science perspective, but it also is it's so important to understand these dynamics because everyone in the House, their votes are impacted, and often the Senate, by where they fall in this fight. So now I'm going to walk you through how a bill becomes a law in Ohio. This is just a very quick graphic to remind folks that a bill usually has to go through the House and Senate before it gets to the governor. A lot of times in the news, you'll see a headline that's like, "Bill passes Ohio House," and you assume that it's becoming law. And you're like, oh, I guess there's no chance in fighting this bill, but actually it has a whole nother chamber to go. So it's very important to check and see how far along in the process a bill is. So step one, obviously, bill is introduced. It can come from either the House or the Senate. Sometimes it can come from the House and the Senate as like a show of force. Those are called companion bills. And then the bills are numbered in order of introduction. So this is important. The House Bill 1 is going to be the first bill introduced in the Ohio House at the beginning of a General Assembly, a 2-year term. And then bills are going to keep that same number the entire time, the entire term. So even if House Bill 1 passes the House, goes over to the Senate, still going to be House Bill 1 because that lets us know where it came from and how far in the process it has gone. Step 2 is once a bill is introduced, it gets assigned to a committee, which is a subsection of members who are passionate about a certain topic or category. One of the most important things we can do as advocates is end up on these committee notice lists, which are email lists from the committee about when they're having hearings, which bills they're hearing, what type of testimony they're going to accept, that kind of thing. And I will send you this, but I also want to walk you through it because it's easier to do if you've seen it done before. So I'm going to walk you through how to sign up for a committee notice list because it is that important. This is legislature.ohio.gov. It is all the committees are laid out there. And I'm going to click on Senate committees and show you how to sign up for the Senate committees first because it's a little more complicated than the House. So you can see they're all laid out here. They're in alphabetical order. You can click through and find the ones that interest you and your issue area. And I'm going to click just on Education Committee as an example. So then you see the members here. The chair is always going to be listed first. The committee chair is incredibly important. They're the person that you are going to email or call about your bill. They're the one who decides which bills move and which don't, which bills get hearings and which don't. They decide the rules of the committee and who gets to testify. They're also the person you're going to email your testimony to if you're coming in to testify. And in the Senate side, they're the person you're going to contact to get on that committee notice list. So I'm going to click on Senator Brenner's face here. And you can see on the left there is his contact information. You contact his office and you say, I would like to be on the Senate Education Committee notice list. And then they'll take your email and you will start getting those all important emails that are literally how everyone in this space learns when bills are moving and what kind of testimony is accepted. The House has made it a lot easier. It's the same website, legislature.ohio.gov. I'm going to click on House committees. And I'm going to use HB 488, which is, I know, a very important bill to you all. And that is in the Economic and Workforce Development Committee currently in the Ohio House. And so I'm going to click on that one. It's in the bottom right there. So the House has made it super easy for us. You could literally be doing it right now on your phone. You just click on that nice little mailing list button and you sign up for the Economic Workforce Development Committee mailing list. And then you will know when the rest of us know just as quick when the bill that you care about is moving, what type of testimony they're accepting, what the rules are for submitting testimony. And that chair, again, is going to be the first person listed. He's the one that you really need to contact about the bill because he's the person who decides whether or not it moves. So then step 3, your bill is supposed to start getting hearings in the committee. This does not always happen, especially for minority party members, but it happens to everyone. Often a bill will go to committee, sit there for the 2 years, and then die. So one of the most important things we can do is demand hearings for bills that we like. And it is shocking how often they will give you a hearing just because they're tired of hearing from people about it. And even if you only get one hearing and you don't get your bill all the way through the process in this GA, this term, it's still a crucial step. Because if you can get that second hearing, that proponent testimony hearing, that means that I, as the staffer, get to bring in experts in the field and business professionals and parents and kids who would be personally impacted by the bill and have them give their powerful stories to the public, to these legislators about why this bill is so important. And I get to bring in the press and have them listen to these hearings, and maybe they'll write stories or do news clips, and you help advance the conversation about the bill and why it matters so much. Any hearing that you can get is a step in the right direction. It can take a couple GAs to get your bill through, but anytime you can move your bill forward is a victory. Another thing you can do is if you don't like a bill, you can call the committees and demand that they stop having hearings for bills you don't like. And again, it is shocking how often they will not have hearings because too many people are paying attention to the bill and they don't want to deal with protesters and that kind of thing. Often, My goal for advocates is to literally stop a bill week to week to week until the 2 years are up and the bill dies. That is often our strategy, and sometimes it works, which it never should, but it does. And yes, I'm saying call a lot. So it's not like calling Congress. At the state level, there's not someone putting your information into a computer. You're not going to get kicked out if you call someone who doesn't represent you. They're actually not writing anything down. You're just talking to a staffer, and there are not very many staffers. There's one state rep on the House side in each office and 1 or 2 Senate staff. They may have 1 intern or like a fellow, but there's not going to be very many people in the office. So if you call a lot, you're going to end up building a relationship with these staffers, which can be critical. They can get you meetings with their boss. They can get you inside information if they like you and they know you care about a certain bill and they hear about it in the hallway, they can contact you. It's really incredibly beneficial to be friendly with the staff. But you also want to call because you want to take up their time. Because they're not writing anything down, the way to get to the members is to have them, they go to their staff at the end of the day, they say, "Hey, what'd you get done today?" And the staffer says, "I got nothing done today because everyone was calling about that rail bill." And that is how you get to the legislator, letting them know that the members of the community care about a certain issue or bill. It's also important to call because there's only 1 phone line per state house office. That means that the senator's staff are calling each other on the same phone line that you're calling. They have to listen to their voicemails. They cannot let their voicemails get full. And so what I always recommend is for advocates to call and actually leave a contact number and ask for a call back. And it is incredible how often you will get a call back, even if the legislator is never going to agree with you on the subject, because they only maybe had 5 people that day who left a phone number. So it's a good way to test whether or not you have a legislator who is in fact responsive to the public, is to do that. So always call if you can, obviously email, tweeting at them, sending letters, coming in to meet with them, all very valuable, but the phone calls are big. Okay, another thing is, I did mention this a little bit, but you can absolutely, and you should, call people who don't represent you personally. That is common because there's so few people calling the state house, especially if you're calling the committee chair or the ranking member or a powerful person on the committee saying, "I'm calling about this bill in your committee." They will understand that. But obviously it is most effective to call your member. So if you happen to be calling your member, let them know that you are their constituent. It does hold weight. So I've mentioned testifying a few times. One of the most valuable things we can do is come in and testify for or against bills we care about at the state level. The goal is to testify in person because you will be there in front of the legislators. They can ask you questions. The press will be there. You can potentially get news coverage. But we do make it difficult. We tend to have hearings at like 10 o'clock in the morning on Wednesdays. And I can only tell you when the hearing is going to start. I can't tell you how long it's going to go. So you do end up having to give up quite a bit of your work day, which a lot of people cannot do. So we also have the option to testify written only, which is still an official part of the record. The legislators will still have it there in front of them on like a little iPad, and it will still be shareable and clickable online. It just you won't get the back and forth, but it really often can be very powerful to get a large number of people to submit written only testimony. And then the legislators can point to the number of testimonies and be like, "Look how many Ohioans care about this topic." So it really is still very valuable, especially because so few people know to do it, that when you get a lot of testimonies, the press and the legislators take notice. But if you can get your people there, that's the best possible option because, again, so few people show up to the state house that the press and the legislators take notice when a room is full. The cool thing about testifying is it is so easy that it is literally the entire process is written on this one slide. So you're all on those committee notice list. You've all signed up for them. Step 1 is you're going to see that there's a hearing for your bill. You're going to write your testimony. Step 2, you send your testimony by email to the committee chair, that all-powerful committee chair, 24 hours before the hearing starts. And you have to do that even if you're coming in to testify in person. They have to get your testimony by email in advance. And you're also going to send them a witness slip, which is just, and I'll send you a blank one. It's just basic information like if you're a lobbyist, if you're representing an organization, that kind of thing. That's the whole process. You email your testimony to the chair, you email them that witness slip, and that's it. You're officially part of the record. The only other step is to show up if you're doing it in person. And a great thing about testifying is the shorter, the better. Truly, a few sentences can be very effective. A few paragraphs is perfect. You don't want to have to feel like it's a homework assignment because they won't read it all. And also, if there's a lot of people testifying, they will cut you off. So the shorter, the better. I also tell folks to consider their audience. Think of your most conservative uncle who loves to talk politics at the Thanksgiving dinner table. That's going to be the people on the legislative committees, because a supermajority of members in the legislature also means a supermajority of that party on the committee. So good to remember your audience. And I will send you this as well. This is a template so that you can feel confident that you are writing your testimony the same way, that you're formatting your testimony the same way that the pros are. The lobbyists are going to be using this exact same format. So you can feel comfortable knowing that you're doing it the same way. And you can see how simple and short it is. It really can be, the shorter, the better. Another great option we have is to watch committee hearings and session live online. It's free, ohiochannel.org, no subscription needed. The recordings are also there forever, so as far as I know. You can go back and watch House committee or House sessions from decades ago. But this is an option that is available to folks if you can't get there, or if you're testifying and you want to go back and get clips of yourself. This is what it looks like. People probably watched ohiochannel.org during COVID with Governor DeWine's COVID press conferences. So that entire process I just talked about was a bill going through committee. Once a bill passes out of committee, it still needs to receive a full floor vote. So if it was in the committee in the House, it needs to then get a whole House vote. Some bills will get through committee and never get to the floor, which has happened a lot during this current term with all the fighting between the leadership. Once a bill gets a full floor vote in the House or the Senate, it has to go over to the other chamber, do the whole process again. So it would then get a committee in the other chamber, and you could come in and testify for your bill again. There are some ways around this, but this is the traditional process. And now I'm going to talk you through a couple resources real quick and then answer some questions. So this is, and I will send you all these, this is ohiohouse.gov. This is one of the best ways to look up your individual members and get to know them, figure out if there's anything you have in common or if there's anything they really care about that you can then use to connect with them. So this is ohiohouse.gov. This is what the membership directory looks like. I'm going to look up the chair of the committee that HB 488 is in, which is Rep. Lawrence. This is his page. All the member pages look like this. His contact information is there. His news section is going to be big because it's all the press releases he's put out. So it's anything he cares about, he's going to put out a press release about it. That gives you an insight into what he feels strongly about. His bio is huge. You can figure out where he was, like where he went to school, where he grew up, what he's interested in, what his family is like. You can see what legislation he has both introduced and co-sponsored. You can see what other committees he's on. It's really great to understand the member, so that if you're meeting with them or you're talking with them, you can find points of commonality. I will also send you this list. This is just a tiny, tiny sampling. Ohio has some incredible advocacy organizations, no matter what issue area you care about. They are nearly all nonpartisan. They focus on an issue or category of issues, and they help you narrow down the huge amount of bills coming out of the State House. They help you figure out which bills are the ones worth fighting for and against. A couple other things here. I want to walk you through very quickly how to find a bill at the State House. So this is legislature.ohio.gov, which I will send you. It's the same place where you found those committees earlier. We have a search tab here. And it's broken down in a lot of ways. You can type your bill number in, which I'll do in a second, but you can also look up by bill sponsor or co-sponsor. This is a great way to look up the legislator you want to learn about. See what bills they have sponsored, which means which bills they have they have written and put their name on as like the lead on the bill. Or co-sponsored, which means they didn't write the bill. They may not know every detail of it, but they thought it was important enough to sign their name onto it. So it's a great way to understand what the legislators are up to. But I'm going to type in your bill number. So this is HB 488. This would put Ohio back into the Midwest Interstate Passenger Rail Compact. And I'm going to click on it and show you what the bill page looks like. This is the bill page. They all look like this. You can see the two sponsors there on the left. You all are very fortunate in this process that you have, probably due to some great advocacy as well, you have a Republican and a Democrat on this bill. That is helpful. It really does increase the likelihood that you'll at least get those hearings, and then you can move the conversation forward to eventually get this bill passed. So you can also see in the bill process where it is. It's in its House committee. So your goal would be to get this bill through the committee very quickly and then passed quickly through the process by the end of this year, because this bill will die at the end of this year and have to be reintroduced. But I'm going to click on the documents tab there at the top left and show you some great resources for advocating for the bill. So the documents tab is huge because you can read the bill itself. If you want the actual text, it's there. But one of my favorite pieces of resources for advocacy is the analysis. So I'm going to click on the bill analysis. These are nonpartisan bullet point breakdowns of what the bill would do. They are shareable, they are clickable, they are written by a team of lawyers that are hired by the state called the Legislative Service Commission. They make it so much easier to get your friends and family and community members to understand what a bill would do without forcing them to read what can be a very intimidating looking legislative document. So I'm going to click on the bill analysis. So good. I love a bill analysis. The summary is there. It's just an easy bullet point breakdown, and these are shareable online of what the bill would do. And you can share this with anyone in your community to get people pumped about your bill without having to make them read the bill itself. But if you want to read the bill, you can also do that. And I'm going to show you a quick tip on how to read a bill. Although you all are lucky in that your bill is very, very short, so not as intimidating. So I'm going to use a scary, intimidating bill as the example. So this is a totally different bill. It's 93 pages long. Yeah, HB 488 is like 9 pages long. But I'm going to use a quick example just to show you how to read a bill if you ever end up like next year when the budget is thousands of pages long. I'm going to show you a quick tip on how to read this, even though it can look very intimidating. So a cool thing to know about Ohio is that our bills are written out in a way where current law is also added in for context. So sometimes a bill can be 100 pages long, but there's actually only 3 or 4 pages of language that you need to pay attention to, and you can kind of skim the rest for context. So all of this plain language at the top there, that is existing law. That would not change. It's there for context. And then underlined words are words that would be added in if the bill becomes law. Crossed out words are words that obviously would be removed if the bill becomes law. So there's actually one bill that I'm currently advocating against that is 1 word long. It looks much longer than that, but you have to skim very carefully to see the exact word that they would be changing. So it can help you speed up the process there. And then another resource you're going to need to know during the budget process, this is the Legislative Service Commission website. They are unsung heroes of Ohio, LSC. They're nonpartisan, hired by the state, mostly lawyers. They're the people who write our bills for us. So a lot of states don't have this power, but Ohio does, where you don't have to know how to write a bill to get a bill introduced, which is very helpful. You can just find a legislator who cares about the topic. They will get LSC to draft the bill for you and get it introduced. They also are the ones who write those amazing analyses I was just talking about. But during the budget process, this is lsc.ohio.gov. This is going to be the website that everyone lives on in policy world. So I'm going to click on the Budget Central tab to show you what it looks like. LSC is incredible. You can literally go and just nerd out on this website and find what Ohio was spending money on 100 years ago, if you feel like it. So there's actually going to be just a ton of resources here. I'm going to click on the main operating budget to show you. So this is the main operating budget. It's broken down into categories. You can read a comparison document there at the bottom. That's literally an entire line by line breakdown of the budget. I do a full hour-long training on the budget if you're interested. It is a very complex process, but this is just like 2 slides to give you a very, very quick overview. There's also, so one thing I want to show you is that the budget process is coming up quickly. So at the beginning of this coming calendar year, we are going to begin the process of allocating all of the funds that are going to different programs in Ohio. And that process has to be done by June 30th of next year. So it is a very quick 6 months that is going to take place starting in January 2025. Another thing to know is that when we say the budget, we're actually referring to several different bills. There's the main budget, there's the transportation budget, and the workers' compensation budget. There are likely pieces of all 3 of those given you all's issue area that you will be needing to advocate for. So yeah, spend some time. I'm happy to do the whole budget training at some point as well, because it is a lot, but this website is going to be where policy staffers live during the next 6 months. And then just a reminder of how much power there is at advocacy at the state level. There truly shouldn't be because of the current dynamic of the one-party domination, but advocates have just accomplished so much, and a lot of it's not in the press, a lot of it doesn't get a lot of news coverage, but a huge amount of life altering policies, life improving policies get passed by advocates picking an issue and sticking with it, being that squeaky wheel, and working, if you can, across the aisle to get things pushed into bills as amendments, get things pushed through under the radar. A shocking amount of stuff gets done at the State House that you never hear about because of advocates. So very excited to be working with you all on this. If you're interested, and I will send you all this as well. This is how to follow how things work at the State House on social media. We try to put out very simple calls to action that are like phone number, person, sentence to say to them, to help people take or do advocacy during their busy life while they work and take care of kids and pay bills. So would love to have followers there. And if you happen to know a billionaire and want to give me some donations, that'd be cool. All right, I'm going to pop back in and answer any questions that you all have.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel.
Rachel,
Maybe we'll start off with Jessica.
You touched on this and you said you're going to send out the materials.
Yes.
Which I assume will include the recorded presentation itself.
Yes.
Because these are questions I've been asking John, and you touched on it. When you say, sometimes you use the language, you need to call your legislators, but you also when you talk about writing testimony, so it's not just the same. So there is like a format, there is kind of, and you touched on it partly, but the one you showed, it said, "Thank you for letting me testify." So it's kind of goes along with testifying in person. There's a like protocol for like how you say chairman so-and-so starting your testimony. So because the one you showed seemed kind of like it was for somebody that was testifying in person, but that can be used for that's the same as you're writing.
Yeah, the format for writing one where you're just doing written only is going to be very similar. You would just remove like, "Thank you for letting me testify today." Yeah. But it is tradition to still write like the names of the members as an introduction. But yeah, it's that template can be easily adjusted based on whether or not you're coming in person or
you write to all the members. You say chairman so-and-so, and then representatives listing up.
It would be chairman so-and-so, ranking member so-and-so, and members of the blank committee is how you tend to do it.
And are the witness slips the same all the time? Can you get ready? You said 24 hours. Can you get it ready before then, or are they going to give you new information 24 hours before?
Great question. Yeah. So most of the committees will accept a generic witness slip, which is the one I'll send you. There's a few committees that are sticklers where they have their own witness slip, but that's really easy to fill out. I absolutely recommend sending or writing your testimony as far in advance as you possibly can. Like right now, you all know that you want HB 488 to pass. I would recommend writing your testimony today. And because that means that during lame duck, which tends to move very quickly, if there is a time when they say, okay, we're going to have a hearing on this bill in 28 hours, you can turn in your testimony because you've already got it written. That happens a lot during lame duck, that very, very quick turnaround time. So writing your testimony far in advance is a great plan. If you already know how you're going to feel about a bill, if you already know what you're going to want to advocate for or against.
Probably a question for John, but do we know, he said November 12th. We think we know that's going to be the date of the hearing.
Oh, wow. That's very soon. If that's the case, that's
Yeah,
the day.
so I'll field that one. I do have a verbal commitment from Chair Lorenz to have a committee meeting with proponent testimony on November 12th. But again, until we get that committee notice, we're not going to know for sure that that's going to happen. So to Rachel's point, we definitely want to have our testimony prepared and ready to go so that when that does happen, we're prepared. But that would be the first, she had mentioned lame duck. That would be the first committee hearing during lame duck. And I don't know that we'll be able to commit to that with everything else going on.
What do you mean? We don't know that
So-
you'll be able to stick to it.
Let's do a couple other questions, Jessica, just so that we can get some other questions in for the hour. So how about Glenn?
Yeah, hi. Rachel, thanks a lot for taking the time to do this. I listened to your podcast as well.
Oh, nice.
And so anyway, my question is, when you're signing up for these legislative notices and stuff like that to be on these lists, do you have to re-sign up every General Assembly, or is it kind of one size fits all?
Unfortunately, you do have to sign up every General Assembly. It will last for 2 years. So right now I'm signed up for pretty much all the committee notices, and I will have to go through that process again in January, which is frustrating, but it is because the membership and leadership of every committee will change. And the chairs of the committee will change, and they will have different rules for how to sign up, that kind of thing. So we do all have to go through the process every 2 years, which is annoying.
Okay. And could you put your email in the chat, please?
Yes, absolutely.
While you're typing that, Rachel, I actually have a question for you. Because a lot of the times we're trying to get more input and people reaching out to their legislatures than just us in the room who are devoted enough to be here at 10 a.m. on a Saturday.
Right.
And so my question is, if we could get 100 people to send the same message, is there a diminishing return that we get there? Like versus having 30 people who do a personalized message. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yes, it's a common debate. So I personally am of the opinion that personal messages hold more weight, even if there's fewer of them. But there are people who disagree with me, who believe that just drowning the inbox in hundreds of the same message, it definitely, like, it's memorable, right? The staffer will definitely see it and be annoyed. And so that can be a strategy. But the problem with those, in my opinion, is the staff will see that those messages are coming in. They will write a generic response, and then they'll just press send every time they get that email. So it's harder to acknowledge the people and their arguments that they're making. So it's really about whether or not your strategy is like sheer numbers or actually getting to them via policy argument.
Got it. And then my other question is for that the legislative the lawyer group that writes the bills
Yes,
and stuff.
Legislative Service Commission, LSC. Yeah.
Is there anything that like advocates do to communicate and work with them, or are they like totally walled off from us impacting them?
Yeah, they are. They only work with the legislators. So
Okay.
if you want a LSC to write a bill for you, you have to find a legislator who will get that bill drafted.
Right. Okay. So we can't email them or call them.
There's some policy folks who've been around long enough that they've got like a friend at LSC who will work with them, but yeah, it's not part of the advocacy process, at least.
Gotcha. Excellent. And then I think Sue has a question in the chat that probably is better for John to answer. So when it comes to us reaching out to legislators about related bills, is it recommended that we say we're from All Aboard Ohio, or like maybe say a member rather than we are representing? What's your take, John?
Well, I would say, and I'll put this out for Rachel to agree or disagree. I think your strongest advocacy is always with the person who represents you directly. I think you as a constituent is always your strongest voice. So if your representative or your senator happens to be on a committee that we are advocating to, they are definitely the one that I would focus your efforts on, because at the end of the day, mechanically, you are a vote that keeps them in office. And I think they tend to put a little bit more weight behind constituents. Now, when you're reaching out just in general to a legislature or a legislator that does not represent you, Mitch, this is probably something I'd defer to you and the board for, because we do have some pretty strong rules about folks representing themselves as All Aboard Ohio. I don't necessarily think it would be a problem to credential yourself as a member, but you definitely want to make it clear that what you are saying is your own opinion and not necessarily the opinion of All Aboard Ohio, because ultimately that's up to Mitch and myself to be the public representation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's in line with what I was thinking, John. You can say you're a member, but do not say you're reaching out on behalf of All Aboard Ohio or representing All Aboard Ohio.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, that's entirely a strategy point as well, if you want everybody to be. But honestly, my personal opinion would be advocate as a citizen of Ohio. So it looks less coordinated. It looks like just a lot of Ohioans want public transit, which they do. So it's pretty easy to organize it that way.
And I guess the other piece that I will add is we as All Aboard Ohio will also be advocating, saying that we are representing our hundreds of members or thousands of members. And that's why it's important for everybody to be a member. So, because then we can say that you're a member. So check out our website to become a member if you are not yet.
Yeah, and the unions do that a lot too. They'll be like, we're here, the 10 of us representing so many thousands of Ohioans who are working today, and why'd you hold this hearing at 10 a.m.?
Yes.
But
Rachel, I had a crazy thought about, we were talking about the emails and like sending the same email 100 times, or, 30 people sending different emails. The mechanism to send 100 emails is easier because a lot of times people just click a button and it goes.
Yep.
We're in a little bit of a world of AI where things like that can change, where we can pre-draft 100 emails that are similar but different.
Mm-hmm.
And every time somebody clicks, they get a different one to send, and it maybe fits that middle ground. Just wondering your thoughts there.
That's a really interesting point. Oh, I need to learn AI. But yes, it is. The more personalized you can make them, the better.
Mm-hmm.
It does increase the odds that you get an actual response. Although if they're similar enough that it looks like the same issue area, you might still get the same generic response. Which is why I often recommend calling, because they can't just click a button. They have to listen to you. But yeah, I love that idea. One of the things we do try to do to get around that email problem in pre-AI ages is give them a template that is changeable. And so they can like do it themselves. But I kind of love this AI plan.
We'll cut that out of the recording though, to not give away the strategy, Ryan.
Love it.
Got it.
Awesome. Are there any other questions? Jessica, did you have another one?
Well, I know John and I have been talking about this. we talked about this is all about, Rachel's gonna send out all her materials, including the recording, and all this can be shared with other people for, well, for MIPRC or for other advocates.
Yeah, please share away.
As far as the rail advocacy itself, do we have, John and I talked about the last, maybe it's more a question for John, the last, the item that went out about MIPRC, there was, it was before the initial June sponsor hearing, so that information is in there. Are they, do we have, because I've been to a lot of these calls and these presentations that the All About Ohio and MIPRC have held. Eventually, maybe not even for MIPRC so much, but when we get into, do we have our new literature that has all the points about what's good about rail for economics and safety and the environment? Because I know you've been rebranding everything.
So Jessica, we're working on that, and whenever we put out the request for mass reaching out about an issue, we will be providing materials for people to use concurrently. But you gotta just know that we're keeping track of those kind of things, and we'll be on top of it and pass it out when the time comes.
So you'll be doing some.
Yep, we're keeping track. So, and John's doing a great job of staying on top of things, and then Beth, who's our communications director, and our communications and social media team are doing a fantastic job of keeping the branding up to date and things. So yeah, just stay tuned.
So John, are you going to have a new
Jessica, we will send stuff out as the organization deems it's time. So
well,
I would.
John, is that you? John, were you going to say something here?
I mean, I would just add to that. Yes. Yes. I had committed to you 2 weeks ago that we would have.
Where did he go?
I'm not sure, but I think what he's going to say is that we have limited capacity that we have from our paid staff, and we're working as hard as possible, and so you just gotta know that we'll get it to you when we can. So
okay, I was asking about stuff from MIPRC specifically now.
Well, let's take it offline then. Maybe I don't think everybody needs to be involved with that discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up since we're at the hour. So thank you very much, Rachel, for your time. Like incredibly informative. I'm already like texting people who weren't able to make it today that they need to watch this, because like, first of all, hearing the background is so fascinating. I wish I had popcorn to eat while I was like listening. But then also like I feel empowered and know what to do as some of our bills keep pushing forward. So
wonderful.
I think on behalf of all of us, thank you so much. Thank you for all you're doing, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you all. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks, Rachel. Good seeing everybody.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.